if I had like a fishing wire and it was like, ooh, and then I could have like done like a voiceover where it's all spooky and stuff, that would be pretty legit. Hello, welcome back to my kitchen. Today we're making sugar cookies cut into fun, spooky Halloween shapes. I thought this recipe, which is technically two recipes because you have the cookies and then the icing, would be one of my easier, quicker recipes for this month because I'm trying to do like spooky themed recipes. I was extremely wrong. I can't express how wrong I was. Little peek behind the curtain, I have done all of the steps. The cookies are made. I haven't tasted them yet, but it's taken me, I think 3 days. Granted, I'm doing this like during the week, so I don't have as much time to film, and I didn't realize how much waiting this recipe required. Like you have to wait for the butter to get to room temperature. You have to wait for, that's not really an issue, wait for the dough to cool in the refrigerator. Then you have to wait for the cookies to completely cool. And then you have to wait for the icing to set, which like all of those are multiple hours. So it added up and it's been an ordeal. So if these cookies are not delicious, I'm gonna be a very unhappy camper. However, kind of to balance out the possible pain and suffering from these cookies is I got this super cool shirt for a 5K that I'm going to be running. It's a virtual 5K, but I just liked gluten is spooky and I had to sign up. So this shirt will balance out any sadness that comes from these cookies if they don't turn out well. However, I have high hopes that they're going to turn. I mean, it's sugar cookies with icing. Like, how can that go wrong? Famous last words. But because this recipe is effectively two different recipes, I'm going to go through this in a manner as if it's like almost two different videos, because potentially if this is too long, maybe I'll make it two different videos. We'll find out. So I'm gonna do like the ingredients and then like the steps for the cookies, and I'm gonna do the ingredients and the steps for the icing. And because it's two recipes, this might actually be a decently long video. So buckle up, get a snack, let's go on this journey together. So first up, we're gonna go through the cookie ingredients. Sugar, butter, an egg, vanilla extract, gluten-free flour, almond flour, baking powder, salt, xanthan gum, and an orange. The first step for the cookies is we're going to take the butter and the sugar, beat that together. You could use a stand mixer, but it's not a whole lot, so I'm just gonna use a hand mixer in a bowl, which hopefully that audio isn't horrific for you guys. I might just take that volume way down. But after that's kind of like nice and fluffy, we're going to then add in the vanilla and the egg, and then just kind of give that another mix all together. And remember, the butter needs to be at room temperature. So if you don't do that, it's not gonna become nice and like light and fluffy. So make sure you give it plenty of time to come to room temperature. Obviously you can put it in the microwave, but you run the risk of melting it, which then you're dealing with a liquid, which is just gonna dissolve the sugar rather than, I can't remember the term for what you're doing. I think it's just creaming the sugar in the butter. If it's melted, it's not gonna do that. So make sure it's softened, but not melted, and you'll be good to go. And the next step for the cookies is just to add all the dry ingredients in, and this is going to include the orange zest, which the recipe doesn't like state as a needed ingredient, but the notes say that it kind of is a fun little addition to add. And I figured, go big or go home, orange zest sounds kind of tasty, making these sugar cookies kind of have a little bit of like an orange citrusy flavor to it. So I'm just throwing that in there, and yeah, it should be good. Obviously, which remember, I did this like 2 days ago now. I'm gonna tell you to do it in phases, like add a little bit of the dry and then dump it, but I'm pretty sure if I remember, I dumped it all in, which you shouldn't do because it's gonna make a mess. However, I did handle it. I mean, you're obviously gonna see all this, but if you do dump it all in, mix it by hand first and then use the hand mixer. If you just go hard with a hand mixer, it's gonna be a mess. So, word of the wise, don't make a mess. And now we just need to take that cookie dough that we have, put it in plastic wrap, kind of form it into the shape of like a disc or something, and then pop that in the refrigerator for at least an hour is what the recipe says. I just did it like overnight because an hour after that point in that day when I was doing that would have been like 11 o'clock and I'm not starting to bake cookies. I should have because the bake process is pretty quick, but hindsight is 20/20. So at least an hour, but I've found that more, well, maybe, you'll see in the future steps, maybe more than that cause some issues. So plastic wrap it up, refrigerator, about an hour. So now it's been at least an hour of the dough refrigerating. We are going to take it out and have a floured, covered, surface because we're hand milling dough. You never want to do that on something just kind of dry because it'll stick to things. We want to roll that out to a 1/4 inch thick, and then we're going to cut the shapes of the cookies out from that dough and then kind of rinse and repeat. The recipe does say to refrigerate the dough after each kind of re-rolling. I did not do that, and I will go a step further and say you might not even need to refrigerate it because it's straight out of the refrigerator, hard as a rock, and it crumbled apart. So I actually had to wait for it to kind of not thaw but warm up a little bit so then I could kind of reforge it into one cohesive unit. So I don't know the texture that it went into the refrigerator at versus what it came out, but I mean, you might be able to give it a go. So you'll see this process because I start to roll it and it's gonna crumble apart, and then I panic a little bit, and then I think I try and shove it back together. I don't think that worked, so I just kind of gave it some time, and then that allowed me to be able to do that, and then I could roll it out. So I think the reason that they want it to be extremely chilled is the handling after you cut it, is peeling it off. A few of them would tear, but I will say, if you have a bench scraper, works wonders. You just kind of scrape up the cutout cookie that you have, and that allows you to kind of transport it without having to exert that same force, plus you just separated it. So that rolling, which kind of pressed it onto the surface, no longer has that same kind of force bond. You've kind of broken that. So it's a little bit easier to handle, and then this allows you to move it without having to peel it off, and then you have a lot of different forces acting on it. But yeah, so like these are pretty cheap. I think this was like $6 that I bought. And yeah, a very good investment if you do any kind of baking. I don't think I've used it for anything else, but I'm sure that it has like many uses. Also, it's handy because it has measuring units on it, so you can do the 1/4 of an inch real easy. I just eyeballed it, but if you want to be exact, this allows you to do that. All that rambling is essentially roll out cookie dough, cut shapes, and then put it on parchment lined baking sheet. And now, kind of finally for the cookies, we want to throw that in the oven at 350 for 8 to 10 minutes. Okay, so real quick, I was planning on doing this all as one video. However, I rambled a ton. Like, I mean, you've seen it happen already, just in the sugar cookie aspect of things. So I'm gonna split this into two, because if I didn't, it would be either cut so far down, I'm essentially just reading the recipe to you, which that's not fun for anybody. I wanted to keep those tips and whatnot in there, but that would be like a 40-minute video. So I'm gonna divide them into two, have the sugar cookie be one episode, the glaze be the other episode with the decorating and stuff. So that's gonna be kind of like the more fun, you'll get to see the final product. And unfortunately, I don't have a picture of the cookies just blank, but I will give you a sneak peek into the glazed cookie. So I'll show one here, I'll show one there, I'll show one here, and I'll put one like over top of my face. I hope you've enjoyed this. Obviously, this is a gluten-free, more specific recipe than typically what I do. I usually do a bit more like naturally gluten-free, or stuff where you can kind of swap out like gluten-free flour for normal flour, because a lot of the recipes that I do aren't strictly gluten-free, I just make them gluten-free. But this one obviously is a gluten-free recipe. If you're watching and you are not gluten-free, I encourage you to find a sugar cookie recipe, give that a go. And then the next video we can kind of do together, because there is no gluten involved in the frosting. But yeah, so obviously I appreciate you for watching this, because it's not for you necessarily, but like I like to think that I'm showing that gluten-free food is accessible and delicious, but also that cooking is a fun process that like anybody can go through. You don't have to be a professional chef. You can just be somebody who likes to eat food and can read, because that's really all you need. Thank you for watching. Sorry that you don't get to see the full process in one go, but I'll try and drop it sooner than next Wednesday. I'll try and get it done on like Sunday, and then maybe start dropping stuff on like a weekend schedule. We'll see how that goes. I don't know with editing free time if that'll make life easier or not for me. So we'll play it by ear. But thank you. Sorry that you're not getting the full cookie experience today, but it will come in due time. I've already filmed, everything's done. And yes, so it's just a matter of editing and putting it out, but I just didn't want a massive video because ain't nobody got time for that. So on that note, bye Mom, still not dead. See ya.